Hi, hello world. I am taking a video um, at this moment in time to put up on a fundraising page for a very dear friend of mine. Um, his name is Tony. He is 33 years old, and it's tough. I obviously had hoped that he would participate in this process. Um, Mostly because I think that people would be more likely to give seeing his side of the story or having him speak out and having him actually ask for help. Um, but the days that he's willing to do that, he tends to be in bed and doesn't have the energy. And on days when he's not in bed, he's back in a cycle of drinking and gambling. And I'm doing this video and I'm putting together this website because I do believe that he needs the help, and that given the help, it could make a difference. And it's tough. I've received so much feedback from so many different people, and at least the feedback that I've been receiving from my close circle is that and I think it's a belief that many people share as well, and so that's why I'm doing this video to talk about these things. The belief that when people need to hit rock bottom in order to get help for themselves, and that people have to help themselves, and that you can't save people, and that people have to take responsibility for their own actions, and that when people want to make a change, that ultimately they're going to make that decision for themselves. I also have a younger brother who is an alcoholic, and I know he's considered going to rehab before in the past, but never does. So, and I've talked to my parents about this, and the belief is that, well, when he wants to go to rehab, he'll ask for it, and then we'll bring him. And it seems to be the same belief with Tony as well. And I know why it's there. And I think some people, as much as other people try to control or help or fix the lives of other people or the situations that other people are in, that sometimes you can't push and you can't force. And life has its way. And these, you just gotta let it take its course, kind of thing. And so, a huge part of me, I came from that ideology. I came from that belief system in which, deal with your own shit, kind of thing. But there's something in me that believes and that worries. That sometimes some people are so far gone that they need an external stimuli to push them out of their cycle. When you get stuck going like this and like this and like this and like this, maybe here you could have put the brakes on, or here, or here. But then it gets going, and you crash. And each time you crash, you have that decision to make. Do I keep going? Do I make a change? Or do I not? And the idea is that we always have a choice. I believe very much in choice. But I also believe that sometimes our minds are no longer working for us. Our minds are no longer rational. Our minds are irrational. And I think a part of me that can get this is that as a child, I had an irrational fear of being sick. It's, nowhere near an addiction of any sort. But I could not control my behavior. I could not. As much as I knew it was wrong, as much as I knew it wasn't accepted, as much as I knew that people thought I was weird, as much as I knew that I was being stupid and being basically crazy in a sense. It was irrational to the point of being crazy. And, but I couldn't control it. Eventually I did something. My parents brought me to see a nun therapist. It was a therapist who just so happened to be a nun. I went to go see her once. And they took me in to actually see her for something else. And, but I've always had this memory and thought that they were bringing me to see her because I had this irrational fear of being sick and I was crazy. Because I would literally break out in uncontrollable tears and cry and holler and just be so, so worried about being sick. And so I get it when you're in a space or a spot where as much as you want to be doing something, as much as you know better, as much as you feel you should be doing something else, you don't make those choices for yourself. You don't make the best decisions for yourself. And that's where I believe that Tony is, And I believe that, there's a part of me that worries that he'll never come out of it and that it'll basically bring him to a point where he self-destructs to harm himself and others. Maybe to the point where he does something so horrible that he falls into a depression and takes his own life. But even that is not so much, people die, people do take their own lives. And you can always be left feeling, what if? Could I have done something? Could I have done more? And you can't beat yourself up over that. You can't hold on to that forever. I do believe it teaches us things, like everything does. Or maybe, he'll go on to live the life the way he's been living it, up and down, from job to job, burning bridges everywhere he goes, losing friends, on a, who knows, maybe he'll start teaching and do his PhD and meet the love of his life and have a dog, and all these things will eventually fall into place and he'll just have to go through things on his own. Or maybe he'll, be miserable until he's 50. I know a lot of people who only finally get their shit together at around 50. And get their shit together, say, like, as if that's a bad thing that it's only happening at 50, everything has its due course, everything has its time, and so maybe that's what you have to do, and that's what you have to learn. So there's all these possibilities, but I feel that rehab could possibly change things for the better for Tony now. And he keeps flip-flopping back and forth. Yes, I'm going to go to rehab. Yes, I'm going to go to rehab. But then when he's coming out of his depression and he's feeling a bit more in control, his manic and his bipolar has been really cycling really fast lately, up and down, back and forth. So there's no more in-between phase really at the moment. He's just in bed for 3 days without showering, without eating, or he's getting out of bed. But if he's getting out of bed, he's grabbing a drink, which really ultimately he won't be able to do for much longer because he doesn't really have any money. So he can't do that because not only does he have an alcohol addiction, he also has a gambling addiction, which he hadn't gambled in quite a while. But then the drinking just got worse. The gambling was out of the picture. The drinking got worse. And then eventually things exploded, and, what do you do after an explosion to make yourself feel better? He gambles and he drinks. So, I'm doing this video because I believe in sending Tony to rehab, obviously. There's a part of me that's willing to send him to rehab, knowing full well that he could go to rehab and come out. And maybe it won't work. Maybe he'll fall back into old patterns, old ways. And then you gotta be aware of that that's a possibility. I think a lot of times we all go into things and then with hoping for the best, maybe naively. And so when things do happen that aren't what we wanted, or when things don't turn out our way, we're for some reason blindsided by it and so horribly upset and shocked. But these things happen. Life happens, and you have to know these things are going to happen and possibly might happen. Keep your hopes up, hope for the best. But you know what? When shit hits the bricks, or whatever that expression might be, shit does happen. But I still believe in giving him that chance, that opportunity now. And I believe that a private center is the best, because unfortunately the public centers, I know people who have gone in and out of them, and they're just not set up well enough. And, whether it's time, it's resources, it's qualified personnel. I mean, heck, I've been reaching out to different counselors. I've, dealt with therapists, addiction counselors in 2 different cities, gone to Gam-Anon meetings, I've gone to Al-Anon meetings, and only just now have I finally found a counselor who really seems to know his shit. And because we're all only doing our best. That's not to knock anyone else out there, because you got to start somewhere. But the ones who are the best they've been around for 18 and 20 years. And so you can't fast forward your life. You can't, get 20 years of experience in 5 years. It's just not going to happen. So it's about being a step above someone. You're going to be able to help someone who you are a step above. You're going to be able to relate to someone who's, who you're within distance, who you're in proximity with in terms of help. And so there's always someone that you can help. You're not going to be able to help everyone because your experience just isn't there. Your knowledge just isn't there, but you still can help. And so, but yeah, Tony's been an addict for 11 years. And that's the thing, this goes beyond addiction. It's way more than addiction. It has to do with mental health. It has to do with our society. It has to do with spirituality. It has to do with getting to know yourself. We all need counseling. I know some people don't want to admit to that, but each and every one of us needs counseling. And we get counseling from our friends and our family, and it's great that we have support in that sense. But I don't think I can stress enough how far good, objective, rational, neutral, not disengaged, but, there needs to be someone, or I'd say more than one person in your life who you can talk to who's not emotionally connected and who has been through what you've been already, and who has been through and who has come out on the other side. Because I think a lot of people, especially when it comes to addiction and mental health, have tried and have tried and have tried to help, and they haven't been able to help. And so those are the stories they tell. They tell stories and coping mechanisms on how to deal when things don't come out on the other side. And that's why I'm doing this video, because I know people who have come out on the other side. And I do believe that one person can make a change in someone else's life. It's possible. You can't force it to happen. You can't make it happen, but you can leave the door open so that it might take place. And so those are the people that I talk to. Those are the people who I listen to. Those are the people who I let into my head. Those are the people who I let support me. Because most people are scared. Most people have doubts. Most people have fears. Most people think and are prepared for the worst. Maybe I shouldn't be saying most people. Maybe that's not fair. But it seems like I've got my own fears and doubts to deal with. And I don't want to pass those fears and doubts on to other people. I don't want to pass those fears and doubts on to my children. I don't want to pass those fears. I don't want to live with those fears and doubts. I want to face them, accept them, and live with them, but move past them. And so I have been reaching out to people who have been there, who have been where he's been, and who have come out on the other side. People who were forced to go to rehab, people who didn't want to go to rehab, people who went into the not the public education system, but the public health system, and went through the door and went in and went out and went in and went out, but then finally got some real qualified, experienced help. Whether it was after 5 times or it was the first time. But, you gotta choose which stories do you want to believe, And just because some stories happen for some people doesn't mean it's going to happen for everyone. And so I don't know what Tony's story is going to be, but I sure as hell would like to give him the opportunity and the chance. And if he's not going to take it for himself, I don't believe it's not because he doesn't want it. I believe it's because he's more scared than I am. I believe it's because he's more scared than most of the people around him. So that's why I've made this video. And I hope that it helps us raise money so that he can get the help that he deserves, that all of us deserve. We all deserve the best. We can't always get the best, but I'm not scared to ask the world to give him the best, just like I would do the same for everyone I know.